guess I cleared my cookies and I had to actually log back in. But how's everybody doing? It's sure, I mean, in Toronto here, it's just a beautiful summer day, but it doesn't matter that the sun kills the virus within seconds. No, it's all concern to many people in a park. I still don't get it sometimes when you hear this science, yet it isn't brought up. And more and more, again, I hear them focusing on cases. I hear them focusing on cases. And anyway, hi, sis. So I have a number of things to speak about today, with being calm, but lots of interesting things continuing to come from this because why? There's just too many things that don't add up. Too many things that are being communicated out there more and more in this situation. It doesn't make sense. Like Italy, only 12% of the people there only died that they first measured with COVID was actually with COVID or died from COVID or with COVID at all. So there's still many things. I mean, even in New York, they're being scrutinized very much so for the elderly care centers, sending people back there that have COVID back into those places. Nurses speaking up saying she doesn't understand. It's almost like they're oblivious to caring to what's actually happening with the people, just following through with maybe COVID protocols, but not paying attention to the other details. So crazy. I think at the end of the day, though, there's still a lot of positives, huge positives, and more people I know that I've initially had spoken to were very, very upset about all of this, very much in fear. And now they've kind of turned the corner somewhat and looking back in hindsight going, it's not as bad as it was. So there's a number of people, these are executives, these are business people, and they are going, they remember, they have a memory at least that long, weeks long, and they are, it just doesn't add up. So they're doing what they're doing. I think he had his best friend over, one of the my neighbors. He had his best friend over, and they actually hugged. He's just like, wow. He says, really, at the end of the day, we shouldn't have. I mean, doing it the way we did. So in hindsight, it's hindsight. That's where some people are going to get to right now. Whereas there's a number of people like myself and others, things never added up in the first place. There was no science to back up the unknown, as they say it, as to where it's going to go. And that can be tricky because if it goes the other way, and this is what the arguments are going to be, but what they could have done is they could have done the testing and talked about the science, but this was a man-made virus. I know that sounds really insane, but if you've seen enough of the literature, the published research, you would have the same conclusions. You'd feel very comfortable, maybe not very comfortable as a practitioner. I can look at it that way, but it's but it's crazy. So frustrations, yes, probably more and more. Just like I was speaking to my neighbor about how far do we have to take this? How long do we have to continue? That the isolation is worse than finding the cure. And that's a scary thing in itself. You might have seen me publish things about vaccines, and that there's just one company is actually hasn't even got a track record, not a track record of having any previous, and they're building this company. They're spending all these, I don't know how many millions, probably millions, into building the manufacturing site. So the other thing I don't really get is all this money going out into the vaccines. And meanwhile, you listen to the news and they have all of this, please donate to the food bank. All they would have to do is spend a fraction of that money to supply food to those food banks. in through the back door kind of thing. They really don't have to make a big deal of it. So it's kind of interesting. So at one level, we have to accept and be calm. We have to absolutely accept where we are right now and be calm and look at this actually in a completely different light, which is, what is it bringing up for us? What is it that we can learn from it? What is it that we can grow, grow from? Like, some people are learning now, they don't have a house, they have a home. The importance of living, the importance of being healthy, which gets me to the next piece, which kind of came up this morning for me, which is, I'd like everybody here, or anybody who's watching this video, to imagine this scenario. This scenario is, you're driving in your car. You have no car insurance. How does that feel? So whatever happens, it's on your shoulders, if you want to look at it that way. Car insurance doesn't exist. Let's think about house insurance. You have no house insurance. If your house burns down, how is that going to make you feel? There is no house insurance. It doesn't exist. Health insurance. So just health insurance. If something happens to a loved one, you can't work anymore, you have to go off and you're not going to go off in disability because there doesn't even exist. So all of a sudden, this worry, this anxiety, because you've worked at the job you don't really like and you have an opportunity to leave, but there's no health insurance, there's no long-term disability or short-term disability. That doesn't even exist. One of the things that kind of came to me this morning is that we're not taking full responsibility for things that are happening. No, we're not. It's, well, I have car insurance. Well, I have health insurance. Well, I have life insurance. Well, I have house insurance. It's, this insurance has disabled our, I'm feeling it can disable us where we do not take full responsibility. We're still driving and talking on the phone. We're drinking and driving. We're, not me perhaps, but let's say people in general. We run out of the house and don't even check to see if we turned off the gas stove. So I really wanted to, with just those mentions, if you can figure out what you would do when something happens and you have nothing to rely on, nothing. Would you stop and pause? Would you not drink coffee while you're driving? Would you pay attention more to what you're putting in your body? Would you pay attention more to your driving and to pedestrians and all that? Would you pay attention more? Would you be not as distracted? That was something that kind of came to me this morning, was to really kind of, we think about take responsibility for your health, but just to kind of bring it home a little bit more was actually to speak about how we've been disabled by all of the insurance that exists out there completely. And what would they do in the past? They would band together as a community and they'd have a house built. They would build a house and they would pool together and they would help each other. And if somebody was sick, they would isolate the sick person from everybody else. And if there were children to be taken care of, somebody in the community would step up and take care of the children. It's community. So we don't have that community. That's what the Sapiens book was saying, that we have left community for individualism, for our independence. So it's almost like we get it. We have the luxuries that we have, but we are losing sight of what the responsibility actually means. Being responsibility for our growth, being responsibility for our words, being responsible, 100% responsible. Anyway, I did want to kind of bring that up because in some ways over the next little while, well, actually I have really taken that to heart. Don't have any life insurance. You have to have car insurance, unfortunately. And there's certain things you have. I don't have any loans, so I don't have any insurance that way. You almost have to have house insurance for the value for some people's houses that they are today. I mean, it's that kind of thing, but you get the point. You get what I'm talking about here. So yeah. Hi, Diane. Thank you, Cheryl, for sharing your insight. Greatly appreciate it. Take responsibility for my life and learned that a long time ago. Keep relearning this distinction. Yeah, it's, what's that word responsibility? Just as I kind of shared, I think a great way to think about it is what if I don't have any insurance? And so one of the things that most people are kind of realizing is they are in debt and they have to get insurance for debt. They have to do this and they have to do insurance for this. They're traveling all over the wonderful world and they've got to get travel insurance. In the day, we didn't travel near as much as we're doing right now. But also through this event, we can see just how many people are immune compromised, absolutely taking zero responsibility for their health. From all the numbers of obesity to now obesity, overweight, they're two different things. But the idea, the number of type 2 diabetics, the amount of cancer, this is not taking responsibility for our life. It absolutely isn't, because the choices, especially in North America, are there to grow your own food, to shop locally, to go to farmers markets. It's all there. So that's the interesting part. It's all there. And then the stat my daughter said the other day or just yesterday was the snack food industry right now is doing very well. It's 70, I think she said 70%, but don't quote me on it, increase in snack foods. I'm going to bring this up again. It is around, if we're going to take responsibility for our health, is to understand, and I know this is probably a huge leap for some people, but it is the no snack movement, where we have 2 to 3 meals a day, no snacks. Get away from the snacks. I think the snacks and the ads and the whole even diabetes, more food in, more insulin in. Why would you want to take more medication? It completely doesn't make sense to me, having studied and did a thesis on diabetes. Makes no sense. So no snack movement. 2 to 3 meals, good meals a day. Forget the snacks, even if it's a healthy snack. Most people are craving, not because they're active, not because they're physically active. They may mentally be stressed, and that absolutely brings the cravings on. But there's as much to talk about that as there is, yes, the no snack movement for sure. I wanted to read something. Now, if you think I didn't get a big enough dose with the Sapiens book, I started reading because I just wanted to get it off my plate here. Of course, it's 450 pages long of whatever stuff that's in here. And this one's called Homo Deus. So, Sapiens, I'm off to reading Homo Deus, and I want to read you a few things from it because, again, I have to laugh. If I do not laugh reading this book, I'll be the most frustrated. No, I won't get frustrated, but here's the thing. So they talk about terrorism, okay? And they talk about wars, terrorism, and they make a comment in here. For the average American or European, Coca-Cola poses a far deadlier threat than Al-Qaeda. So take that in. This is the truth of the matter is Coca-Cola poses a far deadlier threat than Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, something like that. And then I'm going to read something else in a bit. But that, when I went to, I think it was both Peru, and I think it might have been in the Bahamas, but it was somewhere. Yes, Bahamas and Peru. And I was there, and I was, in one case when I was in Peru, and we were at the Reed Islands, and I was witnessing, this is historical. This is what natives, whatever you have. They make these islands out of reeds. Very beautiful, very beautiful. And you're allowed to go around and walk. So you're on one of the islands, they bring you there, they talk about it, and then you're allowed to walk around. Well, what I witnessed around the corner, behind one of the reed huts, we'll say the reed homes, was a big, large plastic pop bottle, empty, Coca-Cola, and a little child. I mean, she could have been 3, she might have been 2, but she was holding a bag of Cheetos and eating them. Then we went off on the boat to another one of the Reed Islands where we were just allowed to support the local economy mostly. There was a snack hut there. And when the tour guide came onto the boat, he didn't come on the boat with a thing of water. He came on the boat with 2 pops, and that's what he proceeded to drink, was 2 pops. In being in Peru, I remember talking to a few people how grateful they were for Coca-Cola, how grateful they were, how many people they employed. And I'm going, I'm just listening, I'm just asking questions and listening. But who wants to be in a manufacturing plant when you're in a beautiful spot like that, in many of the places in the world? Who'd want to be working all day? I think this is part of the conundrum a little bit, the appreciations of the way it supports the economy, and then it's just everywhere and anywhere. So when I was at the Bahamas airport and I'm looking at the kiosk where they have some food, sandwiches I think as well, but water, pop stuff, and I'm just seeing this whole row of pop there, and I'm talking to her about it. Not talking to her about it as a practitioner, but just kind of, whoa, you got a lot of pop here. You mean drinking water? You're in the, do they promote that? And she again proceeded to tell me that the Coca-Cola plant was there and how they employ so many people and how excited she sounded with that. I didn't say anything, but I was just listening and asking questions. So Coca-Cola, deadlier than the Al-Qaeda. This is something else I want you to be mindful of too. Whoa, the whole little first, I can't remember what page I'm on. 15. And they had this book, Homo Deus. Like, I don't know if you can see it because my camera video thing on Facebook is off, but so I can't see the little picture to show up. But here they go into, yes, long-term infectious diseases and cancer and heart and old age and germs, and how the human impact on the environment with all of this going on. But then they get to a point where I thought this was very interesting, where scientists are also developing revolutionary new treatments that work in radical, different ways to any previous medicine. You want to guess what that is? I'll continue. For example, that's just for an example. There's other stuff that exists that isn't written in here. For example, some research labs are already home to nanorobots that may one day navigate through your bloodstream, identifying illnesses and kill pathogens and cancerous cells. I'm not going to go beyond that, but they go and talk about the bionic predators and how these things are going to get bigger, and but they do talk about a couple of things. It's almost like a yin and yang with this book. It talks about how the WHO was in a lot of trouble because of the Ebola thing, and then they talk about, so they kind of bring these things in to soften some of the other stuff that they're telling me that they're doing in the labs. So somehow this guy's tuned in through who I don't know, but Bill Gates signs the praise for this book, so that might give us a little bit of a clue. But that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to read this book even further, and really read the second one, is because it seems like this book is coming out with the things that exist that I didn't even know existed, that they're working on for our better good. Very pro-vaccines, this book, at least in the first 15 pages. But it's going to go on, and but they do absolutely talk about, well, here's another quote, another stat. Sugar is now more dangerous than gunpowder. So again, they're putting it out there right in the book for everybody to read and see in there. So it's almost like get back to responsibility. If you know sugar is more dangerous than gunpowder, for the reasons that they don't even go into details here, then why are we consuming all of this sugar? Then why are we doing it? So we're doing it to ourselves because they put the sugar on the grocery store shelf and nobody makes anybody to buy it. So there's either a disconnect in the programming where and the cravings and not taking responsibility for health. They're going to come up with the magical cure, but that ain't going to happen because no matter what, you may have these nano robots circulating in your system, but the root cause is not identified. The root cause of your ailments, the root cause cannot be cured by a medicine. It cannot be cured by nanorobots. It's just not how it works. And I can probably give you some examples. Nanorobots aren't going to be able to have you worry less or to be less anxious. That's the mind. So until there's kind of a connection there with the mind and how that applies to our health, then any surgical scientific findings in do this, do that, antibodies for the blood, all of that, we're still not getting to the root cause. The mere fact that they keep talking about immune boosting or immune compromised people, that we need to immune boost, which is just only one system in the body. The whole body works together. Everything works together. So if we just focus on immune boosting, we're still missing out. We're still missing out on the mind and how the mind works with the physical body and what that creates. So until you actually have something that kind of lines up with the spiritual, with the mental, with the physical, with the body, we're just going down another, if we want to think of it, we're going down a huge rabbit hole thinking that we're going to be saved. In fact, what's more important, and even more important, and I'll keep saying that's more important, is that we do not give up our freedoms. So we stay calm, we take responsibility, full responsibility for our health, and we do not let go of the freedoms. End of story. I'll say this and say this and say this even more and every time. If you don't know enough, and even if you believe that people can't be out there to hurt you or be out there, why would they do that? Or they must know what's better for me. Even if you have that belief, please support the freedoms that we need to maintain here. So one of the things in the US, and I'll put the link below, is the cease and desist letters that comes through the lawyers, California, and then there's a group in America. So I've passed it around to a few people who know lawyers, who are lawyers, and they know groups of people that have been working on other things as well. And I can only imagine that, I think I've been told, just use the same letter that they have in the States and use that. But I think I'd feel more comfortable if it comes from a lawyer. So I'm going to put those links below. But some of the things that are also happening out in the world, very positive, is there are certain groups, and I'll post that link below as well, where somebody's come out and has said anonymously, you're going to see me not using the crazy labels that are circulating out there. I refuse to use those labels. So a person comes out and shares with, now we're thinking investigative reporters, people who are, somewhat able to communicate. And as you find that a number of these are communicating, but not through mainstream media, they're communicating on their own. So they've subscribed in different channels and so forth. But this in UK, so they were told that within the new vaccines, is out of the UK, they actually have pieces Now, I'm not sure I'm going to do it justice because there's these acronyms that are being used. So let's just go ABCD is in the vaccines, and they had already done studies out of the lab. This is with GSK, I think it is GlaxoSmithKline, and but it might be with others as well. But the idea is they're putting things in the vaccines that they've already researched to show that it causes sterility. So infertility problems only on the increase. The idea is there's something for men, and in the case of men, what happens is when it's almost like, yeah, you've got the sperm going in the egg, but the sperm then and in the body actually makes the female have problems too as well. So there's one vaccine for the females, one vaccine for the male, and I'm not sure if this is going to come to fruition or not, but the idea is the UK group, they're getting the scientists that are not paid or not part of the Gates Foundation. They mentioned that they're not part of that, and there's already some that have come together, and they're going to come together, and what they're going to do, they're going to pay for this. They're going to do an independent study on what's in these vaccines. Now, this has been done before. I think it was in Italy, and now Italy is wanting to sue Bill Gates. And I think something happened like that in Africa too as well. But this probably won't be the only time, and it's not been the first time. So the idea is they want to know what's in these vaccines, and they are going to do some independent studies. Don't know how that's going to, it's about keeping on tabs with some of this stuff that's going on. But the good news is that we have some people out there and people in various countries, not just here, not US, not just UK, that are very concerned about the safety about vaccines and what they're putting into them. We don't have to always put everything on a label. And I don't know all of the details with how the vaccine works that way, but when you're looking at what's in them, at once upon a time you really saw nothing. They might have told you what it is. Obviously it's got to be something to do, polio or whatever, and that was it. But here I'm hearing that, and over the years they've been able to put things in there that we don't even know about. It happens with our regular food. I'm going to give you an example. Spices. Look at any food that you have. Any food that you have. If it's salt, it's going to say salt. But what they started to do, I don't know, several years ago, is they started to, on food packaging, they are allowed to put spices. This can happen. This can happen where they don't allow you to put more than that. They don't want the organic foods to be able to say organic oregano, organic, and in some cases, other ones, well, they can get away with it. It's just spices, just spices. So even the very trace particles that can be in foods from testing could be just from the manufacturing process. So it could get into the food. So you think about something that's sprayed with refined vegetable oil, let's say, the equipment, because that's how lubrication, you want to get the food through. And this will get into the food, but they do not have to put that on the list of ingredients. So things with cleaning, things with the materials that the foods are being processed in, heated in, they do not have to tell you, right, that process. Here's the ingredients. You took the bag here, and you can do that. So think about that in a ways that they didn't put, they'll tell you they put tomatoes in there, but they don't tell you that they also put the pesticides that are on the tomatoes in the food. And these are some of the things that it's tricky. And some people say, well, look at this, Cheryl, and tell me if this is good for me. I can't, in all honesty. In all honesty, the idea with toxicity is some people will definitely, we have these conversations, and they'll say, well, it's only a little bit, Cheryl. I go, yeah, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit. over there, a little bit with this, a little bit with that, and it comes in here and it comes in there. And we're not quite sure how the accumulation happens in the body for different people uniquely, right? If you're under a lot of stress, you're like so tight, you're holding on to those toxicity. And it accumulates sometimes, and it accumulates in fat cells. So if you have a lot of, if you have excess fat on the body, it's going to store in the fat cells. Um, and so you have that kind of happening, but there's hormone disruptors with certain, there's ones like aluminum will go into the brain, will pass the blood-brain barrier, and they don't, there is no research to show all of this stuff. And if anybody here remembers when they actually took blood samples, I know it happened here in Canada, but I think it happened now, and they were looking PCBs, and you look this up, you know, blood work with the amount of toxic chemicals, there was dozens of trace amounts, or sometimes unacceptable limits according to Environmental Protection Agency over that, and that was for young, like babies as well as other adults. So we don't really know how, the research doesn't show how all of this stuff works within our body. They do not know, which is why glyphosate can be a problem and other things can be a problem, especially in the amounts that they use. So toxicity, toxicity, toxicity is everywhere, and we just don't know what happens when we accumulate it in the body. However, we do know that there's an increased amount of mental illness. We do know there's an increased amount of Alzheimer's, dementia. We do know those. So the idea is, what better time right now than to actually look at what's going on? But I think it's a self thing. I'll absolutely go into that each and every, along with the responsibility, is self-responsibility. Responsibility for you. It's up to you to say no. It's up to you to change. It's up to you to choose how you want to choose. And economics is at the, I'm going to say at the most glorious, glorious level, is that we get to dictate what needs to be on the shelf. We, because with our dollars. But what most people aren't getting from the picture is that for years now, through social media, through advertising, marketing. When I met somebody the other day, oh boy, I'm trying to remember who it was, and yes, I do know. Okay, we had a really, really good conversation, and she took marketing. So she went to school for marketing. She's in economics, she's in business, and she went to school for marketing. And in her marketing course that she took, she was blown away by all of the deceiving, all of the psychology, the manipulating. She had to leave. She had to leave. I think she went through, and maybe you've got it, but there's just no way she could do it going forward, getting into the industry of marketing. She said it was so great, made her feel so ill, made her feel so, and that's the truth. As mentioned in Sapiens 2 as well, the programming that is going in from, forget about all the advertising and stuff, but all of the packaging, all of the labeling. So this will make you feel great, you know, just the simple thing like that. And you have these slogans, you have, so all on the packaging as well. And somebody sent me something, and it was in there, and I've got the link there, and it's all about how that programming works. So the programming is to do with psychology, and it's in line with repeat, repeat, repeat. So when we think about branding, now we've got to take that into the messages that they are promising us, the messages that they are having us believe, and it's repeated, repeat. So this repetition is programming us, and it's no different than the mainstream media when they keep saying pandemic, pandemic, and all these colorful words in front of all these words, and repeating and repeating. And you could probably watch 15 of the state, you know, mainstream media news, and they're saying the exact same phrase, exact same phrase, exact same phrase for days on end. That's programming. That's programming. So that's, that's the first awareness and recognition to have, is the programming exists. The programming exists, whether you are realizing or not. Just think of it's more of an unconscious thing. You see it, you see it, you see it, and it's coming in. And when you see that product, you're going to remember what they said over here, and you're going to feel, makes you feel good, and so you're gonna buy it. You're gonna buy it. So we definitely have shifts to do, I think, on this planet. One is we're not going to be so materialistic. We're going to keep growing out of that, and that's going to be a shift for the whole industry to actually grow out of that. What I was, and I haven't brought this up, heard this in the news. I was really laughing. It was like this. All right, we have X millions of people out of jobs. We have X millions of people that are going to the food bank. We have this and that happening. Yet, in the next breath, they said, oh, but the stock market's getting better, so that's very good, isn't it? And I'm going, that's like telling me the gambling joints are back in business full swing, and they've got more business than they can, they have to turn away people. That's what that tells me. Anyway, it's my personal thing about, being a risk management and stuff like that. You have to understand that when we think about the stocks, it's just a way to raise money for a company. But what if that company is not healthy? What if that company is not healthy? They don't have proper leadership. They don't have what it takes to be, but hey, we can raise a bunch of money. We can make this, we can inflate the stock price, sell off our own stocks, blah, 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 and it goes on and on. But the idea is, and I remember going in to see the bank manager, and I've said this before, and it was about self-directed, and because I have the experience and the certifications for trading options, I wanted to add options to it. So I'm there with the bank manager, and I don't know, we get into this conversation. He was saying, sure, I can't tell you how many people, now this was several years ago, no, this is probably a dozen years ago or so. He said, I can't tell you how many people end up in my office, a mess, crying, grown men, bawling their eyes out because they have lost what they see as important as their retirement funds or their little fortune because they've moved to self-directed. That's why it kind of came up, because I had self-directed. And so that's the truth of it, people. Playing in the stock market. First of all, if you're just a little guy, a little guy, whatever that means, little guy, you don't really have any chance. Or people are sinking in millions and billions. There's all this money, and they manipulate the market, and the companies are all, doing whatever. You don't really know. You really got to know your stuff. So you really have to know your stuff. You have to be with somebody who knows as much stuff as they know in order to, do okay. But that doesn't mean you can't do very well. I think that's the carrot dangling in front of the people. There you go. So I never make that mistake. LOL. So Jack, perfect example. Jack here that's making comments has, that's what he does. He manages his portfolios for people, right? We've had good conversations, Jack, about this. So it's really knowing enough about it on almost a few different fronts in order to kind of play in that market. So when I heard on the news they were talking about how many millions were out of jobs, how many this, how many that, it was a little bit doomy and gloomy. And then he came on and said, oh, but the stock market has increased. I was like going, really? 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 Yeah, crazy. So anyway, it's definitely one of those things that I understand well enough when you're trying to manage risk and you're trying to bring, I guess, to the world, to the good people to have a good life, and then somebody loses their fortune. It's almost like taking a loan out on your house, which you can now, which is crazy, but take a loan out and put it in the stock market. Now, I have to say, this is what I say to my husband. You have to be willing to lose all your money if you want to invest in the stock market. If you're okay with that, great. Okay, great. But otherwise, you start small. And you start with people like Jack who have enough experience in it, and you start off small. And as you kind of build a little bit, if that's your passion, if that's the way you do, start off small. If you get greedy, if you get and I have conversations this with my husband because he does it, and you have to stay so neutral. You have to be unattached. I mean, this is where you see dollar signs in people's eyes, like you do. You see, and it's not losing yourself in it. Not losing yourself in it. But enough about that. And this crazy book, Homo Deus, which I'll continue to bring stuff in that you probably didn't even know. But can you imagine Coca-Cola is more of a threat, a much more threat to us than Al-Qaeda? Who knew? Anyway, I think it's hilarious. I am skeptic now also. Yeah, and putting clients really defensive for the next 18 months. Yeah, absolutely. I highly suggest that. I mean, there's so much about the bigger picture than I could ever have a conversation, never mind an hour, never mind a day, never mind weeks. But the idea is being calm, maintain our freedoms, take care of yourself, full responsibility. Act as if you don't have any insurance. Act as if you don't have any insurance whatsoever. Yes, tomorrow's the unknown, but that's the unknown. So live fully present in the now. Now I'm just going to try and think if there's anything else I wanted to speak about, but I think that's really the main thing. Well, the other thing is just, I did talk about the processed foods, a little bit of the labels there, but healthy alternatives. And it's clear that in doing my research that this would never happen. We would never lock down healthy people. What would happen is they would lock down the vulnerable, lock down, and I'm talking villages and things. They would do that, but they wouldn't do that. So healthy alternatives, let's get that. No snack movement thinking, in our brains, no snack movements. How can I, what does that mean to you? What do you typically have for snacks? And it's a practice, but I have to say that if you're stressed, any which way, sideways, but that's where the cravings come in, particularly carbs, because it's instant energy for people who are worrying. It's for the brain, because the brain uses 40% of the nutrients coming into the body. So 40% of the nutrients, including oxygen and water and everything that comes in, the brain uses 40% of all that. So the brain is what is becoming very active and on fire. That's what is becoming on fire. So in essence, that's why we crave carbs. And that's why people who are working out too much, who this is how I'm going to lose weight, seems completely, I remember thinking of this a couple of decades ago. If you work out and you have all of that's like you're being run by, being chased by a lion. So of course you're going to crave more if you're working out. So all these people that were doing aerobics to learn weight were actually setting themselves up for failure, because yeah, you'd want to eat. I experienced that. I'm going, what are you talking about? Eat healthy. You just want to eat more and more, but whatever it is. Snack foods tend to be the more carby things anyway. A piece of fruit. So definitely much to do. I think this has inspired me in the last week. I'm working on formatting my book so I could upload it to Amazon today, if that's maybe tomorrow. No promises. We have to see how much there is. There's all these little things. But the idea is to do my online program. This wasn't an online program before, but it's called For Your Better Health, and it's an online program. It was a 6-week program. I'm going to put it online, so I've got to think about that. But I'm just going to do it because it's 6 weeks, and everybody that's gone through it sees how it's just packed full of information. You pick and choose the things you want to work with in the now, the week, or something like that. But then you have it as guides and guidelines and inspiration and motivation. And now I have the Zoom thing, so I can do that as well. So that's kind of cool that way. So I'm definitely going to work on that this week. As soon as I get the book uploaded to get the author's copy of Amazon, then great. I'm just in the formatting stages. So with that, I'm going to say sayonara or arrivederci or bye for now, au revoir. And I'm sure there's a few other in there that I probably remember, but ciao, all those things. So I want to take care, everyone. Thanks for the great comments remarks, always comments, opinions, remarks, questions are always, always appreciated, because that's, I think, community to me is very, it's very important, community. So that's another key word that comes about, is community. And I have to tell you, I'm inspired more and more to get out of the urban environment and into the rural environment. Partially is because the urban environment brings definitely a different scenario for our health. So the rural environment, the villages, the fresh air, just what kind of came up to me this morning is noise, the level of noise. And then my neighbor looking down the street going, that's way too much dust for the concrete cutting they were doing. And he says, I just printed out the bylaw and I'm going to bring it down to them. And he says they should be putting water on it. And this dust was going hundreds of feet, hundreds of feet. And your breathing is, you think of the respiratory scenario. But anyway, for another day, all these little things, many stories we all have. So I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful evening. And I think I'm going to post my chocolate pudding recipe. I've been playing with it, but it's really good. So I'm going to be mindful to put that link. I think it's on a blog. If it's not, I'll put that so it's easy to put the link. But so delicious, so delicious. And you can use carob powder as well. And I'm sure there's many variations, but it's using avocado and cocoa, carob powder, orange juice, dates. That's really raw. If you use dates, it's raw. If you use maple syrup, not so raw. But you could put all kinds of things, vanilla and all kinds of things. So it's very delicious. I will sometimes eat that just for my lunch with that. And what did I put? Equal amounts of coconut. I love coconut. So you could add all kinds of things to this chocolate pudding. And it's very, very, very delicious. Yes, it's really yummy, Carla. Yeah, so I've been playing with that. And here's the coolest thing. My kids and family love it. They just love it. But again, we have to be aware of calories. We have to be aware of the carb component of it anyway. But it's really, really, really delicious. You don't even, I just do 2 heaping tablespoons as a serving. That's just enough for me. But you can be the judge for that. But just a little bit goes a long way. That's what I would say with it. And it really hits the spot. I'm going to try a little bit more avocado, one more avocado this next time, and see how it turns out that way. But take care, everyone. Be calm. Be mindful of to keep our freedoms, community, and self responsibility. Full on. Just, what do they say? Grab the bull by the horns with that one. Anyway, we'll see when the next time I come on. I'm not quite sure. Probably won't be tomorrow. But anyway, we'll see when things come up, because I think it's more about when things come in, and for me, and to come on here and to share with all of you good people, all of us good people. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you again. Bye for now.